Brought to you by Penguin.
"8 Weeks", written and read by me, Baroness Lola Young. For all those whose stories are yet to be told. Author's note. To write this book, I've had to draw heavily on my powers of recall, and although I've done my best to be specific about dates and events, memory has its limitations. Apologies for any errors resulting from my attempts to reconstruct past events and my experience of them. Several names and locations have been changed or redacted for reasons that will, I'm sure, become clear. When I read out excerpts from letters and documents from my files, I will use the pseudonyms of those whose names I have changed. 1. A package arrives. A note from my care records. 8th of August, 1951. Foster mother states infant was received July 30th. Mother has entered hospital as a student nurse. Foster mother will come to Islington Welfare Centre. Infant having feeds of non-dairy milk. There it sat, propped up on my desk in my office at the chocolate factory in Wood Green, North London. A hand-delivered A5 envelope with my name on it. No return address, and I didn't recognise the handwriting. With no idea of what might be inside, I opened the envelope and shook out the contents. Documents and photographs tumbled out in a heap. I spread the items across my desk. 2 passports. One the green of Nigeria, one British and blue. A second, smaller envelope, and a photograph of 6 women at what looked like a social gathering. Both passports belonged to my mother, who had died in Lagos a year earlier, in 2005. The British passport had been issued in 1949, the Nigerian one in 1971. Their covers had faded and were spotted with age. The second envelope contained an undated, handwritten note comprising 2 sheets of A5 notepaper, covered on both sides with large, semi-legible handwriting, and was signed by a Chief Mrs. Obafunke Akinkubi. The name of the sender and the Lagos address meant nothing to me. I looked more closely at the photograph. The light exposure made it seem as though the group of women were bathed in the warm, rosy glow of a tropical sunset. Above one of the women's heads was a little sticker with "Mother" handwritten on it, and an arrow pointing down to her face in case I couldn't identify her unaided. The envelope's contents created a familiar anxiety. The fear that something of which I was ignorant and would like to remain so would be revealed. Something that would disturb the life I was currently enjoying, 2 years into my appointment to the House of Lords. I delayed a thorough reading of Chief Akinkubi's letter for as long as possible, first studying the passports that outlined a story of journeys undertaken and a life lived unfamiliar to me. I couldn't make sense of a series of visas for trips outside Nigeria, but not to the UK, stamped on the blotchy pages of the green and blue booklets. I stared at the little portrait photograph in each. My mother. I had never owned a photograph of her, and I tried to match the woman in the photos with the facial features, buried a mile deep in my memory. Was it vain of me to want to see if I was reflected in my mother's eyes, her cheekbones, the shape of her jaw? I searched her face, her expression, trying to read who she was, get a sense of her character, but her half-smile gave nothing away. There she was, bejewelled and gazing at the photographer, bottles of Coca-Cola and a 7-Up waiting on the table. I had no idea who the other women seated with her in the group photograph were. I turned my attention back to the handwritten note. It contained a brief sketch of the years my mother had spent in London just before I was born. Some of the names mentioned were hazily familiar, others were not known to me.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?